Alright guys, so since Minakaze just released a new Baron mode version, okay, not Minakaze, Minakaze didn't release anything, Rogue Games released a new Baron mode of Minakaze. I am going to be doing a Baron mode tier list. Now this is also going to include some of the ultimate modes of the game, so some things that aren't exactly Baron modes, but I'm also going to be throwing them in here just because they are the ultimate version of the modes. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to the video, guys. Alright, so coming in 9th place is going to be 6-Path Naramaki. Now the reason for this is honestly, it's the second mode of 6-Path Naramaki, by the way, not the first mode. Now the reason for this is honestly because I'm not really 100% sure whether or not this classifies as a Baron / ultimate mode, which is the reason why it's going to rank so low, because I don't feel like it's fair to the other modes if it ranks very much higher. But I did want to talk about it a little bit. It does have a super high damage counter. It has, you know, giant AoE big damage abilities, and honestly the stats of the second mode are very high. There's not much else to say about this mode though, just a very high damage mode overall. Now coming in 8th place is going to be Gen 2 Baron mode. Now Gen 2 Baron mode is obviously the Tentacion mode, so like boom, you just put that into the chat with Gen 2 finally, you know, leveled up. And honestly, this mode really isn't that bad. It's like what I like to call a spam mode. Oh, look at this. I'm literally stuck in a pillar. Hashtag real balance. Look at this balance right here. I'm literally stuck in the map. Get me out of here. Okay, so the M1s do actually chi drain, which is obviously an absolutely amazing thing, since they actually it's a massive amount of chi drain. It's not a small amount of chi drain. It's absolutely massive. You can also summon the tail beast. You know, all the Gen 3s do that as well, but I do feel like what this one has, you know, over Gen 3 is obviously going to be the stats, and I'm literally flying in the sky right now. I am flying in the sky. Look at this. Oh, look at this epic dash maneuvers. But yeah, there's not much really to say about Gen 2. You know, it has you know, massive mode drain, you know, like on the actual mode when you're using it. The mode drain is absolutely massive. You can't unequip it after you use it, and it does have a cooldown attached to it. But the stats are insane, and frankly, the actual abilities are very spammy, and that honestly makes it pretty good. Now coming to 7th place, the Baron mode ranked tier list is going to be Naramaki Baryon mode. Now, let's get this started off with the fact that this has some of the highest base stats out of any normal mode in the game. So just, you know, keep that for a second. And then obviously, guys, the M1s do more damage. The M1s also drain chi. They also teleport you to them, which is honestly irrelevant because it actually will mess up your combos more than it helps you. But the M1s do tons of damage. It chi drains from them. The actual weapon spec of the Naramaki second mode, I would say it's really not that good, but you actually can combo extend with it based on what you're using. The throwable is honestly one of the better things of the mode. It does have a knockback attached to it. You can dash to actually extend it. But what the best thing about Naramaki is definitely going to be the stats, the C-spec, and the actual M1s. But I think that the fact that it's a C-spec that has no timer attached to it, you can unmode anytime you want. I feel like it definitely is a big advantage for it being a C-spec, because there's not many really good C-spec modes in the game. But I definitely think that, you know, the web spec definitely needs a little bit of a rework, even though it actually is an okay ability. The abilities of Naramaki mode you're mostly going to be using are going to be the throwable, the M1s, and the C-spec. Now coming to 6th place is going to be a Paul final form. Now I do not actually have the final form, but you know, it's gonna magically pop up on your screen. Now Paul final form overall is honestly just a really weird, you know, final form / Baryon mode in the game, because since it was the first Gen 1, I do feel like, you know, they had a bit of testing to do and things like that. And honestly, Paul's abilities in general just don't really compare to the other final modes of all the other, you know, Gen 3s. Like it doesn't really have a very special Q spec. It doesn't really, you know, like the actual Z spec is just a very basic Z spec. It's the most basic Gen 1 in the game, and I do think the final mode of Paul is by far the single most, you know, basic Gen 3 final mode. But it does have its merits. You know, it does obviously have a very high raised block. It has huge M1s. You know, the abilities are still good, even if they're not, you know, the best Gen 3 abilities in the game. But I do think the final mode is very lackluster when compared to the other Gen 3s. Now, up next is obviously going to be Minakaze final mode. Now, Minakaze final mode, aka Minakaze Baryon mode, is honestly not really going to be the best in the game. It's going to be coming at 5th place, probably about halfway through the tier list. And I honestly don't think Minakaze Baryon mode is really that good. I mean, the stats are quite low for being an ultimate mode. I mean, like, the E-spec is a block break, but it's, you know, very inconsistent, doesn't hit all the time, really not that great when you consider all the different things that go into, you know, ultimate mode. And then the Q-spec obviously has iframes attached to it now, but, you know, it's very hard to hit this ability on anyone that, you know, knows how to move in this game. Like, pretty much all they have to do is use any throwable in the game to get out of, you know, the Q-spec hitting them. And honestly, it's an extremely counterable Q-spec as well, even though it it has iframes attached to it, you don't have iframes after it, so you could just get countered that way as well. And then the actual C-spec of the mode really isn't that great either. I mean, it's just kind of the third ability. It's honestly just like the third ability. It just has a little bit of different animations at the end, but in the end of things, it is pretty much like the Baryon mode. It definitely is okay. It's a very okay mode overall, but I don't think it's really great or anything. Now coming to fourth place in the Mustang Spirit Baryon mode. Now Mustang Spirit Final mode, as you guys saw in my video yesterday, I honestly don't really think it's that good. So it is slightly better than Appall's, but the actual other abilities of Mustang are better. But when it comes down to it, you know, Mustang Final mode doesn't really have anything special attached to it. The Z-spec is extendable, so you know, there is that. The Q-spec also is an okay combo extender. The actual, you know, the actual tail beast does have a large damage amounts attached to it, so the actual huge nukes attached to the tail beast are very helpful as well. And then obviously, guys, the throwable is the exact same as all the other Gen 3s have. So Mustang Final mode doesn't really have anything going on for it, and if I'm going to be frank with you guys, it's really not that good, and neither is Appall. Except for the raised block, guys. The raised block is definitely extremely good for Mustang. It is very, very high, and Appall's is also very high. Now coming to third place is going to be the Maru Spirit. Now Maru Final mode, obviously, guys, is pretty good. I mean, like, the Z-spec at the end has this huge damage beam that does a lot of damage. Like, it just does a lot of damage. The Z-spec is one of the highest damage Z-specs in the game. But when it comes to Maru Final mode, obviously, guys, it is kind of lacking as well. It's the lowest raised block out of all of, you know, the final modes. But the actual, you know, tail beast it summons does a lot of damage on the Q-spec. The actual Q-spec also is the combo extending ability, which obviously is pretty good. It's not a very high damage, you know, combo extending ability, but it still does some damage, allows you to combo extend, things like that. The actual tail beast that summons, like I said, it does a ton of damage as well. The Z-spec does a ton of damage because it has the beam at the end of it. And then obviously the throwable is the counter at just as the same as all the other Gen 3 final modes. But I do think that what's holding Maru back is definitely the lack of raised block. The raised block being so low is definitely, you know, kind of hurting Maru, but you know, it is what it is. It's one of the coolest looking Gen 3s in the game, and you know, that's a price you have to pay for, I guess. The coming to second place is going to be the Sparky Spirit Final mode. Now Sparky Spirit Final mode, guys, obviously is an extremely good mode overall. The raised block is extremely high. The actual weapon spec is one of the highest. I'm pretty sure it is the highest damaging weapon spec out of all of the Gen 3, you know, Baryon modes. And when you put two and two together, the actual Z spec of Happy, it being super unique, is honestly a huge advantage because it allows you to travel, so you don't only need to use it for damage, you can use it for traveling as well. And the actual Happy Spirit does have a lot of stun attached to it. It does do the surge stun to people, which is one of the longest, if not the longest stun in the entire game. So the actual tail beast does do that on the Q spec, and the Q spec is move stackable, so you could do a huge damage burst with the actual Q spec of Sparky Spirit. Now honorable mention 1 is actually going to be Ryan Rengoku. Now like I said with Six-Pack Naramaki, the reason why this isn't going to be very high or even like on the list, honorable mention is basically not on the list at all, is because I don't really feel like it classifies as a Baryon / ultimate mode. Like all the other ones make sense because they're all, you know, type of Jinchurikis and stuff like that, but like this one doesn't really make sense because it's not really that. It's just kind of like it's kind of like extra, as I would say. It's definitely a very extra mode. There's not really much to say about it. It has, you know, it has huge knockback M1s. The actual abilities really are not that great from the Ryan honorable mention as well. But I mean, like the M1s, like it's very weird as well because I feel like this is one that people were very hyped for, you know, when it came out. And then the only reason why people used it end up being for glitches. I mean, like the actual abilities are honestly, you know, quite terrible. Even though they do like large damage amounts, the knockback they have attached to them makes them almost impossible to use in PvP. And then obviously the actual M1s are pretty hard to use in PvP as well. The stats are also, you know, mid at best. And yeah, it is what it is. Ryan Red, honorable mention. Now honorable mention 2 is going to be Diosenko second mode. Now like I said, this isn't really a Baryon / ultimate mode, hence why it's not actually going to be on the list. But the actual Diosenko second mode is pretty good for team fights overall, and I do think that the second mode, when it comes down to it, is honestly going, it's a very okay mode. I mean, it has, you know, stun attached to it. It has an okay ability for hitting multiple people. There's really not much to say about Diosenko second mode. It's just kind of there in the game right now. Mode 1 honestly is better for duels. Mode 2 is honestly better for team fights. And I mean, like when it comes down to it, you know, Diosenko pretty high stats overall, but and very drippy, as you guys can see. But you know, when it like in actual like PvP and stuff like that, there's usually better stuff, and it, you know, it's very sad, but it is what it is. By the way, guys, what is your favorite Baron / ultimate mode in Shindo Life? Leave them in the comments below. We'll be checking them out. Now coming to first place as the best Baryon / ultimate mode of the game is going to be Happy Final Form. Happy Spirit Final Form is by far the best best in the game, and it honestly is an extremely good looking one as well with the lava abilities. The actual M1s are absolutely massive. Like you can see, he's right there. The M1s are huge, so they'll hit someone no matter how far they are away. The actual weapon spec, all right, there we go. The actual weapon spec is still insanely good as well, because it does have a stun attached to it. So the actual tailed spirit will actually be able to possibly get some of its abilities off, but otherwise it wouldn't have been able to get it off. And I actually do think, you know, Happy Spirit overall is an insanely good tailed beast. I mean, like the Z spec at the end of it does have hit stun attached to it, so you can combo extend with it. Like you guys can see, the little ticks there are hit stun abilities. And then obviously, guys, the throwable is just the basic throwable. All of the throwables are the same. It's just a damage counter. But yeah, you know, Happy Spirit honestly has a lot going for it. Huge damage M1s. The actual, you know, weapon spec of it's a really good combo extending stun weapon spec. And I do think the Z spec also is one of the best Z specs out of all the Gen 3s as well. Out of all the Baron modes, it's one of the best, you know, specs in the game. Just huge damage M1s, extendable Z spec that does a ton of damage. The weapon spec is obviously a really good weapon spec as well. Tail Beast has really good abilities attached to it. Just a really good overall ultimate mode. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe, guys. Bye-bye.